Good evening. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I invite you to join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Kolpak? Here. Korn?
Here.
Preston? Here. Strand?
Here.
Mahoney?
Here. Health. Free COVID-19 at-home test kits remain available to the community and can be picked up at a variety of locations, including Fargo Public Health. As a reminder to parents, the COVID-19 vaccine is available for children 6 months and older. The Environmental Health Division is reporting a record number of grass and weed complaints this year, went up from 50 a month to 200 a month. Owners are encouraged to mow and maintain their property to avoid fees if the city has to send someone out to mow it. All metro area cities have ordinance regarding grass height and noxious weeds. Library. Teens are invited to participate in several events this summer at the library, including making ocean slime Tuesday at the Carlson and Northport libraries. And the Crow Show art exhibit, which celebrates local and regional artists, is on display through July at the main library. Planning. According to estimates recently released by the U.S. Census Bureau, populations in the metro area cities have increased by 1,876 residents from 2020 to 2021, for a total of 215,065. Of that number, Fargo has a total population of 126,748, which is an increase of 895 residences last year. Now, the Fargo Fire Department diligently does flush all our hydrants in the community. Sometimes people ask, why do they do that? Our comps team has come up with a video to explain a little bit of this for us. Thank you. Approval of the order of agenda. Is there a motion to approve the order of agenda, delaying item 5 for 2 weeks and moving item 18 from the consent agenda to the regular agenda and adding item 43, which will be a report from Chief Sabowski on the officer-involved shooting?
I so move.
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the June 27th, 2022 regular meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve consent agenda items 1 through 34, excluding items 5 and 18, which have been delayed and removed to the regular agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Shelley, are you keeping up?
Yeah.
Roll call vote.
Strand?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Kolpak?
Aye.
Preston? Aye. Mahoney?
Aye. We're going to do resident comments now. I had 15 people sign up, and I have an option to cut people out, and we don't like to not have people speak. So we're going to cut it to 2 minutes. If you could kindly keep to a 2-minute limit, that would be helpful. That way we can get everybody who wanted to speak tonight ability to speak. So 2 Rail Boxley is up first, food carts.
Hello, it's Terrell Boxley. I'm here because I'm here to oppose your plan to restrict the small food cart vendors' freedom to operate late night. I will have to say I testify to. I've seen the good and the bad of the After Dark. I've been doing it for a number of years. In the most recent, I would have to say the shooting downtown. I, as a food vendor, saved the man's life. Literally, due to what I said, due to what I've done, I can say that it's a lot to say. I'm sorry. But I think that it's just kind of backwards to kill the nightlife or to blame the food vendors for people's choice to drink alcohol. And the noise, the food vendors, we're not the cause of people wanting to drive loud motorcycles or loud vehicles or be rambunctious. As I will ask you guys to reflect upon your youth, rambunctious adults will be rambunctious adults, but to punish food vendors and food trucks and the artists from it's the freedom of expression. If I believe that you guys can remember that, and also the freedom for capitalism, we're actually Top Dog Hot Dog is actually in the 100 things to do in Fargo. If you go back to the Fargo magazine and. But I just would like for you guys to maybe come out at night and get a taste of the nightlife yourself. Don't be scared, but come out. Come out and try the food. Thank you.
Thank you. Pedro Flores. Pedro Flores. Lisa Coyle. Charles Taylor. Tennille Brackens.
I think he's coming up. Yep.
Who's there?
Mr. Taylor.
Oh, Taylor. Okay, thank you.
I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to speak with you guys as well. My name is Charles. I'm with a food cart downtown as well. I'm here to oppose what you guys are trying to do with downtown. I am not as long tenured as some of the other guys that have been doing this for a while, but I can say I've got a number of years underneath my belt, and I too have seen the ups and the downs of downtown Fargo, whether that be the good or the bad. From being a bartender downtown to now what I'm doing now, you will always see some of those things that happen when you mix alcohol, people, culture, all those different things. You're getting a bunch of different people interacting together. But what I can speak to are the positive things that happen, whether it be someone who's just visiting Fargo for a few days or even for the night, and they get to experience our downtown and see the vibrance that they see when most people, if you get outside of Fargo, they haven't even heard of North Dakota sometimes. And that's crazy when you think about all the different things, all the different types of people that we have within our community. So to see some of the faces in here that are going to make these decisions, and the fact that I haven't seen a lot of these faces downtown, is something that's very discouraging. And also for you not to have the people of Fargo actually have their voice be heard and let you know whether or not Fargo food carts are a net positive or a net negative for downtown. If you can't see that, I do believe that you not letting people do that is a gross misuse of what I believe is some of the unearned power of this office. Thank you for your time.
There's no clapping, please. We'll stop public comments if we do that. We don't clap up or down. Tennille Brackens.
Yes, hi, my name is Tennille, and I am here to oppose what you guys are trying to do. I am a mother of 4, and it is the one thing that me and my children are able to do. We actually enjoy doing to get out the house. We actually go downtown and we enjoy the food cart, and I'm asking that you guys do not end the food truck. It is what me and my family, the one thing we enjoy doing on the weekends. Thank you.
Thank you. Jacqueline Dozenrod.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, for giving me this opportunity to speak. Back in April, I came here to talk to you about accessibility in City Hall. Today, I want to talk to you about representation on the Human Rights Commission. People with disabilities are the largest minority group worldwide. I am concerned there is a lack of representation of people with disabilities on the Fargo Human Rights Commission. Mr. Mayor, as you consider nominees for the upcoming appointments to the Human Rights Commission, please consider appointing people with diverse disabilities. I am reaching out to people with disabilities in my community and encouraging them to apply for a spot on the Human Rights Commission. People who are neurodiverse need representation. People who have speech or hearing impairments need representation. People who are blind need representation. People who use prosthetics, mobility aids, or other assistive devices need representation. All these subgroups of the disability community have unique needs and issues that deserve the attention of the Fargo Human Rights Commission. So please select members from these diverse groups when you make your appointments. And to my fellow members of the diverse disability community who are here today or maybe watching from home, get your applications in today. Thank you.
Thank you. Tracy Wilkie.
Baju, I am Wabishke Guiden Ikwe, Tracy L. Wilkie, citizen of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa, and I acknowledge that we are on the stolen lands of the Anishinaabe, my people, and the Dakota Oyate. And I'm here to call for justice for Shane. Why haven't the cameras been released? Why hasn't the footage been released? As people, we need to know what's going on. We are 6% of the population here in North Dakota, but 20% of the incarcerated individuals. We want to know what happened to Shane. We want to know what happened to Luke Laddiser in Cass County Jail the winter before. He died in custody. A couple of years back, I lost 2 relatives in 2 different North Dakota jails, Oscar Wilkie and Oscar Wilkie Jr. We are 6th generation Scottish settler. We have Scottish settler blood running through our veins, and we're still being killed at high levels. There's an article called "The Police Killings No One is Talking About." When compared to our percentage of the US population, Native Americans are more likely to be killed by police than any other group, including African American. We often hear in the media about African American deaths, but we very seldom hear about Indigenous folks. We have a citizen of our reservation, Leonard Peltier, who was a resident of North Dakota also, who's been incarcerated for 47 years. Like, we have ongoing genocide and it needs to stop.
Tanya Red Road.
Hello, excuse me. My name is Tanya Red Road. My spirit name is Badabanoque. I'm also a descendant of Turtle Mountain and a member of Little Shell. So I've been here before, and I'm here for justice for Shane. This has been a really big trigger for me, and I come to you today as a mom. I represent myself today as a mom with brown kids, a mom with children who have mental health challenges, and a mom who has a child who went through a horrific experience with a heroin addiction. My son has been in different incidents where he has been said that he's a suspect in different incidents. One was when there was a robbery at Steve's package store. Him and his 2 other white friends with skateboards. He was pulled aside as a suspect. He was 16 years old. I never received a call that anybody was gonna, talk to my 16-year-old son. There was pictures taken, passed around. I did call and ask for those to be taken down, and why I didn't get a call. I actually heard it through an aunt who heard it through a scanner. That's how I got the response of that happening. Another incident that my son was in, he went to pick up some friends to be the designated driver, and when they returned, the other boys were passed out and kind of humped over or whatever, and I understand that maybe the neighbor was concerned, but again, the same situation. His white friend got to sit in the car and rest while the other brown children got investigated, and my son was the only one who was charged, of course. In that incident. I did call and talk about that as well. My son has probably been many times asked for his ID downtown, and these are all scary things, and so this is a trigger, and I hope that you will really address this for Shane and others. Thank you.
Andrew Blackbird.
Good evening. On Friday, I received messages from one of my Indigenous friends that I went along the lines of, I'm so scared to leave my house. I looked at what he was talking about. The post had an obvious white man with hair pictured, with a post about a bald-headed Hispanic or Native American. I apologize to my friend for his fear. In comparison to other recent cases in which people fled the cops and lived to tell about it, this was tragically different. Instead of employing other methods in a residential environment, the officer involved shot the driver instead of a tire or deploying road stakes. The officer was placed on paid admin leave. Initially, it was stated that the body cam footage would be released within 72 hours. Then I heard that it was unknown when it would be released. We would like policy 424 updated to wording that includes the timeframe in releasing body cam footage in officer-involved shootings. If not immediately, the timeframe should be within 72 hours. Officers should be out on leave without pay until the investigation has cleared them of a criminal act. Pay can be paid retroactively in those cases. Thank you for your time.
Wes.
Since 3 people didn't speak, can I get my 30 seconds back?
We could do that.
Thank you.
Just let me have them reset here. You usually prepare a timed speech, so that is fine.
Wes Philome, he, him, his pronouns. I'd like to start by saying long live George Floyd and Anue Matchik. We are now going on year 3 in which members of this community have been calling for a change in policing, not just nationally, but locally as well. We have not been exempt from the terrors that have plagued this country. 2 weeks ago, I walked into these chambers and begged you guys to get involved and do something. I encouraged every one of you to get involved. I asked that you all do so before something happened that we couldn't take back. And a week later, an unarmed Indigenous man has lost his life. We are now in a reactive state. On January 24th, during a city commission meeting, you all voted to approve a police improvement plan. Mayor, you were quoted as saying that it would take 2 to 3 weeks to create and implement. Commissioner Garrick stated that there would be a review after 6 months. Commissioner Strand, you stated, even if you were the only commissioner, you would create a space to engage with the department to improve things. Now there is a loss of life. There needs to be a meticulous accounting of everything from the improvement plan all the way through the police department. The city needs to furnish any and all documents regarding the improvement plan. There also needs to be absolute diligence in the release of information and body cam footage relating to the murder of Shane Netterville. The fact that the family was not notified or there weren't any attempts that are proven or documented that anyone has shared until after his death when he was shot at 8 o'clock in the morning and passed away around 12 to 1, and his family wasn't gotten a hold of until 4:30. The last seconds of his life, he died alone. He didn't have his family. How could this possibly happen in our city? You guys say far more. You put it on everything, on your walls, on your cards, but what does far more really mean? You guys are not holding yourself to a standard, and so we as citizens will have to. The accounting will happen. Thank you.
Paige Delphinius.
City Commissioners, thank you for having me. My name is Paige Dufney. My spirit name is Wakia Apanupawi Lightning Strikes Twice Woman. I'm here to speak on the Shane Netterville. I just got really emotional. Thank you, Wes. Thank you, Faith. Thank you to the main organizers that have been here through the beginning of George Floyd for having those conversations. I want you guys to know that you set blueprints for us. We listened to you, we seen the way you corresponded, and we heard everything. We're watching, the indigenous community is watching very closely. They asked you, they set up blueprints for you all on how to communicate with us and our expectations, wrote it all down, emails, phone calls, in person, everything, for this moment, for you guys to do better when something like this happened. This was your time to show us that you really had our backs, that you really heard all of their work, and you failed. You completely failed us, and I just want you all to know that. But I also want all my activists and all my people to know that we heard you, we seen your blueprint, we got it with you, okay? And thank you for being here, I really appreciate it. But for the rest of you, it is a huge fail on this part that no footage, everything that they said, and for the family of Shane, we love you. The indigenous community, the whole community that is here right now, have your back, we got you. And I love Fargo. I love Fargo, except for when things like this happen. It shouldn't be happening here. When I first moved here, nothing like this was happening. We have to do better. We have to do way better for our minority population, and it starts with you all. You need to know that. Thank you.
Anthony Bachman.
My name is Anthony Bachman. I'm here to represent other food carts on the situation with getting rid of the late night downtown. I've been doing late night food carts since 2009. That has been the main income of my family. I have 4 children and a wife. This has been my business for a long time, and I would just like for you guys to consider, and even just having a meeting with us food truckers to try to figure out a solution that we can still operate and support our families. Thank you.
Conrad Larson.
Hello, my name is Conrad Larson. My pronouns are he and they. I am here to ask a question, the simple question, what does public safety mean? We've all been told police are an important part of public safety, and in an ideal world, I understand why that might be. I am asking this because we are seeing that a man my age, 28 years old, an uncle like me, was killed. And in that process, police shared very minimal information. What I do know about this man is what I've seen online and what people are posting to suggest that he deserved it. The fact that he had a history of drug use, that he had a record of nonviolent crime and drug use. And when I saw that, people were justifying his death based on that. It reminded me, what is public safety? His first record that we can see is when he's 18 years old and it's drinking. My brother is 27 and he's been dealing with addictions since he was 17. Consistently, public safety has put him in jail, just like it did with Shane. And to think that if my brother were killed because he is sick, And people in this community would declare it a righteous act. And we have footage that can declare whether or not it actually is something that was acceptable for the police to do, and it's not shared. And so his neighbors, his friends, and his family have to see people thanking the officer who killed him and justifying his death. How is that acceptable? How is that public safety? How do we put people in jail when they're sick and then end their life and then let people know?
Either
Listen.
he can speak or you can get out of the room. We'd like to let him finish speaking, no clapping.
I think it's important that we hear that, because this is what we have done. And we've done it more with marginalized people than with white people. My brother is lucky to be alive. Maybe his whiteness is a shield. But you must release the footage or recognize that people in his family and community see people celebrating his death, and there could be proof he is not guilty.
Grace Somboy? Grace Somboy? Nicole, could you just explain to the people with the food carts what's going on in that area? Because are you having a public meeting? I don't like to do retire, but I think you're looking at it. We delayed it, and the reason a lot of people talked tonight was because of the food cart issue. So is there something your department's doing right now with that issue?
We're working collectively with many departments. We should be back. We were going to be back this week, but we are coordinating with the Downtown Community Partnership. I'm not quite sure what the food cart folks are testifying over, because all we have is what was presented to you 2 weeks ago. So we'll have some public meetings and things like that. But there's a short-term solution, and I don't know, working closely with city attorney, so maybe she wants to speak. But there's a short-term solution that we're talking through, and long-term, these will all be presented to you. But first, we need to meet with our stakeholders, so that's why we're not in front of you today.
Nancy, do you want to comment?
I can comment that I've been working with the departments, and we do plan to bring something to you for consideration in 2 weeks.
Okay. Item 36, construction update. Tom Knockmuth, explain.
Good evening. Just here tonight to provide an update on our construction projects led by our engineering department. Start off by saying there have been no safety incidents this year on any of our projects. Again, lots of different places where we can find information about what's going on in our projects on Twitter, Facebook, and fargostreets.com. We do have a few projects that have essentially completed to this point of our construction season. So our citywide asphalt crack fill, chip seal, Eola subdivision, and Madeline Meadows Fourth, which is a new residential division. I just want to highlight Eola, a couple cool features of this project, able to install a shared use path along 45th Street where there wasn't one previously. And then also something kind of unique about this project, it with what is planned down there with the developer, will kind of have a downtown feel. So there's a lot of diagonal parking along this route. So it'll be kind of a unique area. Other ongoing projects, rehab and recon projects. 13th Avenue, contractors working west-east, currently east of I-29, and they are ahead of schedule. On 21st Avenue South, water main is complete in phase 3. Contractors working to finish storm sewer this week, and then they'll start working on the roadway reconstruction portion of that project. 18th Avenue and 40th Street recon, contractors completed phase 2 and will be starting on phase 3 next week, which is on 18th Avenue and 18th Avenue from 40th to 39th Street. So just to highlight 13th Avenue rehab project, again, contractors currently working in phase 2 and 3. All the work in phase 1 is complete. Phase 2 is mostly complete, just working on the eastern limits of that, and then actively working in phase 3. Some additional projects, 7th Avenue and Oak Street, underground is complete in phase 1, and they're starting to fabric and gravel that area, and they've started removals in phase 2. 3rd Avenue and 7th Street, underground from 10th to 7th is complete. Contractors working on fabric and crushed concrete on some of that project. They are complete from 10th to 9th. And then next week, they'll be starting on the portion of 7th Street between 2nd Avenue and 3rd Avenue, which would be just west of the post office. 21st Street South, all the underground paving is complete in phase 1. They'll be opening that portion of the project to traffic tomorrow. And then they anticipate starting phase 2, which would be the portion from 11th to 9th Avenue later next week. Again, working on sidewalk project throughout the entire city. Likewise with the asphalt mill and overlay. Concrete spot repair is nearly complete, really just working on cleanup and restoration. And then also our Hawk installation project, one near 18th Avenue South and University, the other 32nd Street and 33rd Avenue. The concrete work has been complete. They're just waiting for the poles to arrive for the installation of those Hawk signals. And then also some other projects, street light and traffic signal rehab, and citywide pavement marking projects are continuing. Number of new development projects that we're working on. 64th Avenue South Overpass. We'll show you a couple of pictures on that, but bridge girders have been placed and they're starting to work on the bridge deck. The geofoam blocks are installed on the west side and they're starting to work on the roadway west of I-29. 64th Avenue South and 45th Street, underground utility installation is complete. The pavement on 43rd Street south of 64th Avenue is complete, as well as one lane on 64th Avenue has been paved. Veterans Boulevard, underground is complete. Grade and gravel of the roadway is taking place. Crossroads Corporate Center, contractors complete with all underground working on fabric and gravel in that area. Sorry. 64th Avenue, just showing some of the work that was taking place over the last couple of weeks with our overnight closures. So the contractor was setting those center beams, had some false work for that. You can see that false work. And then again, the full span of those beams. This bridge is a fairly long bridge spanning over the interstate to provide for future expansion of that interstate system. So it spans about 200 feet from the abutment to the pier, and then again, another 200 feet from that pier to the other abutment. Just showing, it's a little outdated like I just talked about, but you know, the roadway is completely paved on 43rd Street south of 64th Avenue, and then the contractor has paved one lane on 64th Avenue as part of this project. And the structure there is the Career Workforce Academy. Additional new development projects, Valley View Estates, almost complete out there. Bento View Addition, underground's complete, working on fabric and gravel. Asphalt Wear Course, working in multiple parts of that project. Just want to highlight the work that's taking place on 25th Street as part of that. They were out there edge milling today. The plan is to pave tomorrow and Wednesday, and they're hoping to be complete with that on Wednesday. Flood risk management projects, still working on the Northside flood risk project. Demolition of the lift station at Drain 53 and 40th Avenue North is nearly complete. And then they just have a little bit of slope paving, and hopefully within the next few weeks they'll be completely done with that project. A couple other projects just starting up, Woodcrest Levee and Lift Station, and then the lift stations 55 and 56, which is located along 42nd Street and Drain 27. A few more projects that are yet to start. Rocking Horse Farms, we have an underground and a paving project coming up there. District of Fargo 4th Edition, private contractors working on some stuff, but our project should be starting up somewhat soon. Golden Valley 6, likely starting this week. 14.5 Street should be starting up in the next couple of weeks. And then our Signal project at Veterans and 37th Avenue South should be starting soon as well. And there's some other storm sewer and drain repair projects that have yet to start. With that, are there any questions about any
questions from the commission? Thank you, Tom.
Yep.
You're up to the next one anyway. Item 37 is recommendation for bid award of 32nd Avenue South Project Improvement District BR 22A2. Tom.
All right, so back to talk about 32nd Avenue reconstruction project again. I just want to provide another brief overview. Originally, bids were opened on February 11th, 2022. We received 3 bids. The engineer's estimate was about $11.7 million. We received 3 bids, which ranged from about $16.6 to $19.2 million. Our lowest bid was unfortunately more than 40% over the engineer's estimate. And by North Dakota Century Code, we were required to reject all bids because it was more than 40% over the engineer's estimate and included special assessments. So at the February 22nd commission meeting, bids were rejected for that project. We talked about options moving forward. We knew that we had to rebid no later than November of 2022 to keep the federal funds. On March 21st, decision approved the change to the plans, which would detour traffic, and then plan to rebid the project on June 10th. So we opened bids on June 10th. We received 2 bids. Our engineer's estimate this time around was just over 16 million. Our low bid was just below 20 million, and our second bid was just over 21 million. So on this one, we're about 24% over the engineer's estimate. And as you can see, our low bid was quite a bit higher than what our low bid was in February. So you might ask, why are our costs even higher? So we have had conversations with the contractors that bid this project, but also a lot of our other contractors, just to understand what might be going on right now. So what we've heard is that the changes we made to the phasing certainly improved the constructability and the safety of the project, but the other factors have caused prices to increase even more. So I think everyone is aware of a lot of the things that we're facing right now. So a lot of labor shortage, material shortage. One of the things that I hadn't thought about, but talking to a contractor, it's not just being able to get materials for a project, it's also being able to buy equipment to do the work. It's also getting parts so that they can repair the equipment that might have broken down. So those things certainly increase costs. Materials are increasing and fuel prices are also increasing. And I just really wanted to highlight fuel prices. So this is from EIA.gov, just shows the price of diesel fuel nationwide since July of last year. You can see, it was trending upward, but fairly stable around the time that we bid this project initially. And we've seen a pretty drastic increase in that price. And so you might be asking, what does that really impact? And I would say just about everything. So it's the cost to run equipment, to haul away materials, right? Pavement removals or excess clay from the project, the cost to bring materials to the site. So whether that's materials needed to construct the project like pipe and manholes, but also all the sand and gravel concrete that goes into it. And then it also impacts the cost of manufacture materials itself. So let's talk about project funding. So have a table here just highlighting the funding sources anticipated the first time we bid it, what we anticipated the second time we bid it, and then what it's actually going to be if we award the project tonight. So first thing I want to highlight, special assessments are not increasing. You can see from the table below, those have stayed the same the entire time. We've capped those costs for this project. We did get additional federal funds, which we talked about a while ago. And so you've seen that increase. But really the brunt of the additional funding for this project is going to come from city funds. And so that's through infrastructure sales tax and then the utility funds, wastewater, water, storm, and streetlights. With that, I do have a motion here, and otherwise would be happy to answer any questions that Mayor and Commissioners might have.
Questions? Mr. Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. Tom, help me understand it says here, there are special assessments associated with this project and no protests have been received. Therefore, the protests should be declared insufficient. And then that's built into our motion. Help me understand that whole issue of protests and what that means, that statement.
Yes, so every project that has special assessments and an improvement district has, we send out notices, and then there's a 30-day protest period. So residents are able to send in a letter, send an email, whatever it might be, to protest the project. And so we tally those based on the assessment district, and in this case, I don't believe there were any from what I've been told, but either way, they'd be considered insufficient. I think Nancy might have to help me out here, but I think if a project has more than 50% protests, I believe it's state law that would require for it to be rejected. City Commission could certainly choose a lower threshold as well if they chose on a certain project. Let's say a project had 40% protest, City Commission could choose to reject that bid as well.
Again, I would concur that it is state law. If there's a sufficient number of protests, the special assessments cannot be assessed, is the response. The project could go forward using city funds, but you would not be able to special assess under those circumstances.
Thank you. Just so I understand better, were the people who would be benefiting from this assessment district receiving notice of these modified bids going out?
So when we rebid the project, we did send out notifications as well. We did highlight in that memo, from what I recall, that special assessments were not changing, that there were additional federal funds and there would be additional city funds in that project. But we did highlight that special assessments were not changing.
Commissioner Preston?
So with the additional 7 million coming out of city funds, are we backing up on some other projects because of that?
So the most of that burden is coming from our infrastructure sales tax, and we do have a fund balance in that account currently. I believe it's right around 20 million. So we were planning on spending into those reserves some in our current capital improvement plan for 2022, but this would require us to eat into those reserves to a greater extent.
So is this the, when you say there was a plan to dip into those reserves, is this the first in a number of years that we've had to do that?
So I would say our fund balance in our infrastructure sales tax for engineering fund, that has stayed fairly consistent over the last 3 to 4 or 5 years. So I believe our allocation is right around 8 million is what we get. I want to say initially we had planned to spend around 10 to 11 million this year. But that would obviously be increasing quite a bit with that increased burden of sales tax.
One more question. So this is the first that I've known that there was a reserve fund for the infrastructure building or the CIP. So as I have understood over time, the maintenance projects or reconstruction projects have been we've been slowly falling behind a bit. Wouldn't this add to it?
So part of it, let me answer how I think I heard your question. So you're right. I would say we have been falling behind a little bit, and that's one of the things that we recently discovered through our pavement condition survey.
Right.
And so it was one of our intents this year to beef up our pavement preservation program, and that was the reason why we were starting to dip into those reserves a little bit. We would like to do some more work to understand how much we're falling behind in our pavement preservation program. But there were some things that we did in previous years that also reduced that. So there was a lot of concern going into 2020 about what was going to happen with COVID and funding and all those types of things. And so we really did reduce our capital improvement plan that year, and that did increase our reserve some. There was another year where we eliminated all water main replacement water replacement projects, and that also increased that fund a little bit. But again, we're trying to do some work right now to really understand where we are and how much we are falling behind to be able to have a better understanding of what we should be spending in capital improvements.
Tom, we heard a variety of concerns about a right-hand turn on 32nd to 25th. Can you update me on that?
Sure. There was a decision made pretty early in the process of designing this project. So currently, heading westbound on 32nd Avenue, turning northbound on 25th Street, there is a designated right-hand turn lane. It was decided through our decision document to eliminate that right-hand turn. And so there would, to make a right-hand turn going northbound, that lane would be, that movement would be with the through lane traffic. And so that is what was decided. So currently there is no designated right-hand turn lane for northbound movement.
If we wanted that to come back, would that have to be included in the motion?
Since it was a decision by City Commission to not include that, if there was a desire to include that turn lane, yes, I would recommend that be as part of the motion tonight.
Okay. Mr. Strand.
Except for that's not bid. We didn't ask for a bid, or did we? Did we
So-
ask for a bid on that?
So it's not included. So what we would have to do is we would have to issue a change order on the contract to include that as part of the project.
But they have to take it out, John, anyway, either way. There is a right-hand turn right now, so that part of the bid is in there. It's just that
Putting it
instead
back
of
in.
putting something in there, you're going to put concrete back in. Commissioner Colbeck.
Mayor, thank you. My understanding also is based on traffic counts. That's part of the reason for that decision, correct?
Correct. So through the traffic operations that we studied as part of this project when working on the design, it wasn't impactful to remove that turn lane. And some of the benefits that we saw in it is that currently the sidewalk is very close to the back of the curb on the north side of that intersection. And so we wanted to create that greater distance, greater buffer between the pedestrians and the moving traffic. And so that was one of the ways in which we did that.
But yet opposite, there is a right-hand turn lane opposite, so the pedestrian on the other side of the street still has a length of distance, right?
So one of the things we did as well is overall just the lane, those crossing distances for all the pedestrian crossings were reduced. Part of the way that was done is the medians were removed at the intersections, and also our lanes became narrower. So we did, if you guys remember, and it was quite a while ago that we talked about, we talked about how those crossing distances were changing based on our proposed plan. But at that intersection, it was pretty considerable on the east side of the intersection, that crossing distance reduction.
Mr. Kopech.
Thank you. Yeah, safety was going to be my second point. And the third is that the boulevard will still have enough access in future. If you decide to put in a turn lane, it can be a future option.
Correct. One of the things that we did, we were mindful through the design. We did try to place all of our more permanent, traffic signal bases, street lights, fire hydrants, things like that outside of that zone, so that if it was ever such an issue that we wanted to add back in the turn lane, it'd be as minimally invasive as possible to do so.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Can I have a motion?
Mayor, I have one more question.
Commissioner Strand.
Thank you. So I understand this, there's about almost $8 million of federal funds on the line.
Correct.
If we don't approve this project, as hard as that is to do and as more costly as it is compared to before, we lose that $8 million?
Correct.
We will never, ever have a chance for it?
We did talk to the DOT about what options we would have, and I don't think we would have, with the timeline that we have, I don't think we'd have the opportunity to move those funds to another project. I think if we did not award this project tonight, we still could rebid a project. What I'd tell you is that from everything I've heard from our contractors, I've heard it from competitors of Dakota Underground, that this project will not get any cheaper. What I've been told is that you should not anticipate a lower bid if you go back out and rebid this project. So an option would be to gamble and try to rebid a project later this year in that October, November timeframe. But again, everything I am hearing, I don't think we would get a better price.
A couple things commissioners have to know is they're not going to do a fall construction. They're not going to be doing it this fall at all. We've done partial fix-ups of asphalt all along 32nd Avenue. And we're sure, and the reason the engineers are bringing this to you tonight, Commissioner, is that they feel prices will go up. They feel this is our opportunity. To Commissioner Preston's concern, we do have a reserve fund that we hang on to in the CIP, just though different things can come. In 2020, we decreased the budget overall by 10 million. Part of that was taking some money out of our CIP and holding on to it. So we will, and the team is looking at long-range planning and what we need to do that. It's essential that the 1 cent sales tax go on after 28 when it goes out, because it is so helpful to us to help fund our CIP. So that's concern. I did hear a lot of concerns about that right-hand turn, and my feeling is the population wants it in there, but it's up to the commission what you want to do on that. I think many people reached out with emails and felt it was important to the traffic flow. And so would like you to consider that as an option. But Commissioner Strand.
Thank you. Again, from my understanding, if this does not move forward, what do we do with 32nd Avenue then?
So if we did not award a project tonight, again, an option would be to rebid for this fall and hope that it comes in cheaper, which I wouldn't expect it to do so. Or we could, if it wasn't awarded tonight, we would likely lose out on that federal aid of nearly $8 million. We would still have a need out here to do something at some point, right? So Public Works has done pretty substantial patching and overlay on this area to buy us time until next year. But we still have a sanitary sewer line that needs to be lined. We still have storm sewer that is significantly under capacity. And we still have a roadway that is deteriorating and will need to be reconstructed in the near future.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Preston,
I would move the recommended motion.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, my question is if we want to add the right-hand turn, can I make a friendly amendment or how would that proceed?
You could ask for an amendment.
I would like to make that additional amendment to include the right-hand turn lane.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
So, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, when we go back to build a right-hand turn lane, obviously we're going to need one. It's a high-traffic area. It's going to cost substantially more if we do it, if we don't do it right now, just like the rest of the project. Thank you.
I would step from the chair and make the second for discussion purposes. Any whoops, now you have to say, Dave, any discussion, because you got the chair now.
Do you get what I'm saying, though? 32nd Avenue, I think we are all in favor of pedestrian safety, but 32nd Avenue is a high-traffic street, whether we like it or not. And that right-hand turn lane, that helps traffic move. And our population is going to be growing in that area. I mean, you can just, I don't want to put Tom on the spot because the engineers would say, we're going to need that eventually because it's just a high-traffic street. It would be nice to have it be a low-traffic street, but we can do what we can for pedestrians, but you got to be able to handle the traffic. And that right-hand turn lane, just like the rest of the project, if we do it next year or in 5 years, it's going to cost tremendously more. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Dave, your chair now because I second your motion.
All right.
You have two.
Commissioner Kolpak.
Thank you. So as a new commissioner, I would like to hear some of the feedback that was received prior to, making this decision to go to a through lane with a right-hand turn on that side, and the decision from planning is part of the cost analysis. And I know traffic control was analyzed as well, and so I would appreciate a little more context for my benefit.
So since I'm the chair, if I can respond real quickly, but we heard tremendously, and mostly, I would say the majority was from the businesses right along that corridor, because there's a lot of commercial traffic right there, banks, grocery stores, and things like that. And so that was their main concern. And you know what, Tom, I am going to put you on the spot since I'm the chair, but I wish you would talk a little bit about the right-hand turn. That does help traffic move a little bit.
It does. So here's what I'd say. By eliminating the right-hand turn, we will increase delay. That's a fact. It wasn't to a degree that it impacts the level of service, and that's what we use when we're making a lot of those decisions. So it would cause delay, but not so much that it impacts the level of service for right-hand turners or through movements.
But just to follow up, Tom, but I would say if we're going to have increasing traffic, then the delays would also increase, correct?
Yep, and that would also have been taken into account because it looks at current traffic levels and then also forecasts what those traffic levels are going to be to make those decisions. I'll say this, I would be willing to bet we would get more calls when the project is reconstructed and opened up if a right-hand turn lane is not there. I think that will, even though we've discussed it a lot publicly, I think there are a lot of people that would be surprised by that decision.
Mayor Mahoney, then Commissioner
Just a
Preston.
thing, in fairness to Commissioner Kolpak, actually, we had a lot of discussion when you guys showed the plans about pedestrians going across that intersection. You were narrowing the width of the road. You were doing a variety of things to save boulevard trees and do a variety of other actions. The commission at that time, I wasn't aware the other side wasn't also going to get rid of the right-hand turn lane. It was just on the other side that they got that. So in fairness, on the other side, you are shortening the distance to make it better for pedestrians. And even if we left the right-hand turn lane in now, it would be less distance. Is that correct?
Correct. Because again, we removed the median there and we've narrowed our lane widths from 12 feet to 11 feet. So even if the turn lane went back in, we would still create some buffer between the sidewalk and back of curb on the north-hand side. And we would reduce that crossing distance on the east side.
Thank you.
Commissioner Preston.
Part of the concern back then also was and if I'm understanding this correctly, the median will be gone. The left turn lane will actually move over and increase in width because you're needing to realign the left turn lanes on both sides. So the perception of being able to actually walk across that street, it's going to be more intimidating. Even though the lanes are narrower, the actual, without having that median in the middle, it kind of is it might be a little bit of a psychological buffer, but it does feel safer if there's a little space there. Overall, it's going to feel like it's a wider space to walk. The other thing I would say, and most of this conversation and discussion, I think, happened more from the commission perspective rather than feedback perhaps from the general public when we were talking about pedestrian safety. But if you go back to Goal 2030 and all of the other plans we're talking about, it is about traffic calming, making it more pedestrian friendly. And yes, it's very difficult to do that retrofitting an existing street. And certainly the 11-foot lanes will slow traffic down, hopefully. But the removal of the median is also going to make it feel a little bit wider, and so that might impact speed on on increasing side. So, I think back to Commissioner Kolpack's question, I think it was more a discussion up here in relationship to the plans that we've already been working with. So.
Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Commissioner Pepcorn. I heard from quite a few people, but it wasn't so much about the right-hand turn lane, it was get this project done. They want this project done. They don't want to kick the can down the road. That's what I was hearing mostly from people. I know there's one citizen I heard telling us how stupid I am, and others are about this. I mean, seriously, but I heard that. I'm used to that. But I maybe heard from one other person. I didn't hear from many people about the right-hand turn lane. Maybe now they will, but there was no doubt they said, get this project done. And I'll say one more thing. If we slow the traffic down a little bit, fine.
Mm-hmm. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, I want to follow the procedure correctly, and so which, should we vote on? There was two different, so we vote on the amendment first? So, Shelley, will you call the roll, please?
Sure. Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye.
Strand?
No.
Kolpack?
No.
Preston?
No.
Motion fails, so now we'll vote on the first proposal.
Preston?
Aye.
Kolpack?
Aye.
Strand?
Aye.
Pepcorn?
No.
Mahoney?
Aye. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
And that ends my short tenure as chair. Back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Item 38, you have my recommendations for commission liaison assignments. I did change one. Kolpack, Commissioner Strand had suggested perhaps Kolpack would do the communications. She has a background in communications, so I felt that was a reasonable change. Also, Commissioner Preston had requested MetroCog. MetroCog has 7 members, 3 from Planning Commission and 4 from the Commission.
Let me clarify. That was the MetroCog Transit Coordinating Board.
Okay, different board.
Yeah, it's the Transit Coordinating Board that I had trouble with.
Dave, who's on that otherwise?
So that's more technical. And so, but I will say the main MetroCog committee, even though all of us can't attend, it's very important for all of us. And that is changing in the near future where we're going to determine the projects. And so, and everyone already knows that, but it's very important for all of us to be there. Even if you can't attend in person, we can be on the phone. So it's a flexible thing.
John, do you want to be on that? It's a policy
No,
commission.
we already are.
We already are.
Yeah.
No, we're all squared away.
So let me, if I could clarify. I'm fine with the MetroCog board meetings. I can make those. I've been making those. It's the Metro Area Transit Coordinating Board that I've not been able to make.
So you're not all on that, Dave?
No, I think,
So, Mr. Chair, that's John Strand, or Commissioner Strand. That's Commissioner Strand is the liaison, correct?
And we're meeting Wednesday, I think, of this week.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's probably the third meeting I've missed,
They
so,
don't, yeah.
So there are two of you on there or one?
2, right?
I believe so,
Yeah.
at least. So you're saying you can't attend?
Yeah. And one of the other commissioners want to volunteer to that position? Not a lot of volunteers here tonight.
I will. Sorry.
Commissioner Kolpak, okay, we'll put
Sorry.
Commissioner Kolpak in that position. If that's okay, that would be my liaison assignments. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Preston?
Aye.
Kolpak?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. Update on city administrator selection process. Joe Manette's going to come up. I've had several who talk to me, and it seems to be a kind of a very crucial selection. It seems that all the commissioners want to be on the selection process, so talking with Jill, rethought that process and probably would not have anybody else but the mayor on that, so we don't have one of the different commissioners. But would think that we would have a final, when the final 3 candidates are present, all commissioners would be able to meet, greet, and talk to them. We want to keep away from open meeting laws in this selection process so we get good candidates. So that's the first part of it. We really would like to have good candidates so it doesn't have to be in the public. Sometimes we're finding it hard when we turn to the financial director. It's really difficult for people to come out and be candidates. The idea then would to get it down to 3 candidates, and at that point, those people would put forward to the commissioners to meet, greet, and talk to. Jill will explain how we normally do selection of department heads and explain the particular process of why we're doing what traditionally the city of Fargo does. You were also given a job description and would like you to look at the job description. I know Commissioner Preston has some different duties she might want to add. And if you could forward those to Jill, we'll include those on the job packet. If there's something dramatically different, then we'd bring it back to the commission to approve it. But normally the HR has the ability on policy changes of the job to add those as recommendations. And then that would be brought back to the commission to look at the end. So Jill, I'll let you go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. So as the mayor said, we typically use a hiring manager model of when we're posting and forming selection committees, where we're really kind of coordinating all aspects of the selection process, including the interview, job description updates, posting of the position, recruiting material, the selection of the actual committee itself. We're typically coordinating with a primary hiring manager. And so that's why initially we have been meeting with the mayor as the liaison to this city administration office. So that hiring manager model, again, just allows for that streamlined approach to really managing all the details of a overall hiring process. In this case, too, we've talked about engaging an executive search firm to assist in recruiting, which our team, as a small team, does not have a lot of capacity to do that really active recruiting nationally. So we are engaging executive search firms and in the process of receiving quotes from search firms to determine if we can, we'll move forward with a firm to assist. And as the mayor had said, one of the reasons too that we want to look at the formation of the committee, if you all as a city commission delegate that responsibility to a committee, or there are more than 2 of you on that committee, then those meetings, interviews potentially are subject to open meeting requirements. That can be a deterrent to an applicant very early in the process if they're not quite ready to let their current employer know that they have an interest in seeking a position with another city as a city administrator. So those are just considerations for you all as you look forward and think about how you want the process to move forward.
Questions? Mr. Preston?
So if we would want to look at the applicants as they come in or the entire group, would we be able to do that?
So if you all are actively involved, and that is an active component of the selection process, I believe that could create an open meeting requirement. I would defer to Nancy to fully respond to that.
Of course, it's a little hard to know what you would do with what you look at and who you would be talking to and responding to. So the question that I have is that you cannot meet and discuss those candidates with each other or a designated body for open meeting requirements. Certainly, I would work with Jill every step of the way to make sure that the city was in compliance to the extent possible, open meeting, open records laws.
The reason we're trying to get a professional firm to do the search for us is that kind of replaces us looking at that, because when I first went out for our financial director, we actually had to do it twice to get enough candidates that could even do the job. So we're trying to get away from that. The professional firm would bring those candidates to us, and our hope would be we pick a firm that you approve of that can do that sorting for us. The idea is those people would do kind of the screening and finding out, yes, they're qualified, yes, they can do the job. Anticipate we should have good candidates brought to us. But when the final three candidates, you get all that data when we get to them, right?
Right. When we reach the stage of finalists, then that becomes public information.
Okay. I'm sorry. Another
Commissioner
question?
Preston, yeah, go ahead.
So explain, if you would, one more time, at what point, like for instance, with the police chief position, and then thinking with the DEI position, we were also able to meet with and at least get a sense of where this new person might, or one of the applicants might be coming from. Will you explain to me at what point we would be able to do that?
Yeah, those processes were rolled out a little bit differently. You all collectively made a decision on the police chief process to hold that as a public process. And so because this commission designated the selection committee and the formation of the committee, all aspects of that process were reviewed to determine what was subject to an open meeting. For the DEI director, you all directed staff, the HR team, to form the committee on that position. And you nominated one from the commission to participate on that selection committee. But those two processes were launched a little bit differently, and that's why one resulted in open meetings throughout the process and the other one did not.
So my question was, or maybe you're telling us, we won't have that opportunity at all this time?
So yeah, the second part of your question there, so if you chose to launch it in a similar manner to the DEI director, there was an opportunity in that process to meet with the candidates, just one-on-one. You were not reporting back to the selection committee any information or preference or necessarily voting on a candidate, but just an opportunity to meet those candidates. Commissioner Preston, I believe you were a part of the selection committee, so you had a greater role in that, is what I'm recalling. But so again, it goes back to the how the committee is formed to determine whether we're subject to public meetings or not. If there's a decision to direct staff to form the selection committee and determine the process, we would do that, and we would plan an opportunity for all of you to meet with the candidates. But again, as soon as you provide feedback to the selection committee, my understanding is that then becomes an action of the city commission, a formal action, and then we that perhaps should have been held in a public meeting context. And again, I'll ask Nancy to weigh in on that if I've missed any details there.
No, again, I would concur. It is, a public meeting is if there is a smaller group of you or a group of you or a designee that is appointed by the city commission is meeting in total. So again, we would do everything we can to comply with those laws.
Selection of Bruce Grubb for Chief Administrator Officer was made with 2 people last time when we do that. So we're trying to engage department heads on this selection committee because they have to work with them. So when Bruce was finally appointed, it was actually 2 people that made that recommendation to the commission. Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. And Jill, you know, I guess there's lots of ways to skin this cat, however we choose to. The best example I know of is the school district. You know, the school district has 1,800 or so employees. I'm pulling that number out of my head, but they only oversee 1 employee, the school board. They only evaluate 1 employee. They only give direction to 1 employee. The school board manages the superintendent, just like we manage and direct and oversee our city administrator. That's the only employee we do that to. So I'm not going to sit in the background. I don't want to sit in the background and see what other people bring to me and us. I want to have input up front. When the school district had that, we all sat and we all interviewed the candidates. What's wrong with transparency, by the way? I mean, I'm not opposed to transparency. I'm all for. I'm all. Excuse me.
Please.
Transparency with hiring this position will be to our benefit, and I don't want to skirt transparency. So what I'd recommend we do is we ask the school district, how do you approach your school superintendent's positions? I remember us all being engaged. I remember us all being involved in the interviews. I remember us all being involved in every step of the process. This isn't a department head. This is our city administrator who oversees every department head, and they need input too. When it's a department head, when our city was hiring the police chief, and I'm comfortable and happy, and I respect our police chief, and I'm on board with where we are with that hiring, Commissioner Preston and I didn't meet the candidate till 4 hours before they selected it, the person. We had lunch that day with the 3 finalists, so we had no input. That's not what I want. I want input up front, and I want the public to see what we're doing, and I want to have a relationship that we know we shaped so we are able to know how to work together with whomever we hire.
We could look at the school board, John. The open meeting, we've not gotten really good candidates so far, and/or we can look at a hybrid model if you'd like. But once all the commissioners weigh in, then we have to change the process. It could be find the candidate, bring them to you, and then open it up to open meeting laws in which you participate in picking the final 3, pick the final candidate.
And bear with me, Mayor, you know, there's a lot of discussion in town about the commission and the form of government we have, and you were running on the office saying you want a full-time mayor position. And then that's a whole paradigm shift. How does a full-time mayor interact with a full-time city administrator? There's a lot to unpack here, you know, with our future directions as well as just this position, you know, in that regard. But I want to be at the table proactively up front to help at minimum shape what we're looking for.
So she was just explaining what's going on. I would suggest that Jill work with the commissioners and we look at this again, see what we can come up with. Is that seem fair, Jill? Commissioner Colbeck?
Mayor, thank you. Yes, that's exactly what I was going to ask for. If we could have some time to really understand what the options are and come back with a little more transparency around the implications of open meeting, open records, at what point in the process, I'd really appreciate that.
Very good. Any other discussion? Item 40, Commissioner Strand to assess City of Fargo's health insurance coverage. John to explain, Commissioner Strand to explain.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to guess about 4 years ago, an employee of the city approached me and said, you know, we don't have contraceptive coverage in our health insurance policies. And of course I'm going, okay, well, I guess I need to learn more about that. And we've had discussions annually with the HR director and internally about what's it take, why don't we have contraceptive coverage in our health insurance, what's the implications of having it or not having it. I've had other people say, well, how can you not have it? You know, federal government, they say requires it, but I guess we have a grandfathered plan that doesn't include contraceptive coverage. So, cutting to the chase, I'll be frank. In light of Roe versus Wade being dismantled by the Supreme Court, I think we are compelled to know what are the implications to our workforce. What will happen with our coverages? Are there any gaps in services that will be coming to families that had coverage before or not? I don't know. I just want to know this. Is there a desire to have contraceptive coverage? I understand we have a grandfathered plan, but again, these are changing times. So my desire is to have us evaluate our health insurance plan in light of Roe versus Wade, in light of the changing, North Dakota has a trigger law that kicks in the 28th of July. I just want to know where we're at and our people are at and what we can do to help them or not, and what their service levels will be or not with our insurance. And I know we've talked about this, Jill, but I want the public, it's important the public know we're paying attention to these issues, with the changing dynamics out there, that they see that we're trying to be on top of this and not leave them in a lurch and without services that we expect them to have. So I'm hoping for an evaluation of our health insurance coverages, and I'm hoping we can weigh pros and cons of services that may or may not be affected post the Supreme Court decision. I'm hoping we can get a sense of, is it realistic or not to ever get contraceptive coverages for our families and or other types of, some people even say, put trans health in there.
Jill,
we're in a different world today.
Jill, can you explain that?
Yeah, so, and just a little bit of history too. So, as you all know, our health insurance for the city of Fargo employees is offered through Blue Cross and Blue Shield. We have a fully insured plan, but it is a grandfathered plan. And so when we transitioned back in 2018 to offering our own health insurance, we really modeled the plan off of what was being offered through PERS at that time, and we were a grandfathered plan at that time as well. So oral contraceptives were not covered under the previous plan, and then when we formed our own plan with Blue Cross and Blue Shield, that continued as we continued to be a grandfathered plan. So each year during the renewal process, that's a topic that we review. We know we have heard from some employees on the topic of oral contraceptive coverage as well. When we've discussed in that topic in former renewal periods, what we find is that to jump to the next level plan that's comparable to ours but has some added coverages that includes oral contraceptives, it would typically, over the last years that we've reviewed, would have resulted in an additional 10% of premiums on top of what's been around a 15% increase. So it really becomes a question of what can the city budget support and what can individual employees who are enrolled in our health insurance support in terms of premium increases as well. So, we have visited a little bit. That is something that we're going to review again during this year's renewal process, look at what those other options are. Those added higher levels of coverage also come with other additional coverages, right? A higher level of preventative care and other really positive coverage as well. But they come with premium increases too. And so that has been a key part of that discussion over all of these years since the transition in 2018, and certainly will be a key component of the discussion again for our renewal for 23.
And just for the commissioners, that happens in August, is that right?
Yeah, so typically we get an early estimate for budget purposes of our renewal premiums in July, but the renewal and really the review of utilization and all of those, that more formal information comes typically in August or September, where we have additional information and are able to see what those options would be if we opted for other health insurance plans.
Commissioner Kolpak.
Yeah, I just, maybe a comment for some context coming from the health insurance world most recently. I will share that typically a 5% change in benefits is a trigger to lose your grandfathered status And so it really is going to be a balance of looking at I certainly support the annual review of what the benefits are for the employees. It's also one of the largest expenses that the citizens pay for as part of the general budget in support of personnel, which of course health insurance is both a retention and an attraction component of any staff. And so I just wanted to put that on the table that there are some other unintended consequences sometimes from changing benefits from a grandfather plan.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Preston?
If I could just ask a question, and I don't know if you can answer this, Commissioner Kolpak, but has there ever been an analysis of the cost of unplanned pregnancies versus the cost of covering contraceptives?
Yeah, I don't have Commissioner, I don't have an answer directly for that, but I will say that the rules that trigger the loss of grandfathered status of a self-funded plan are pretty strict. And so it's a percentage game of the benefits and the cost of providing those benefits. I don't think, that's a great question to your point, but I've never seen any information or data.
It's more of a general
Sure.
kind of question than it
Sure.
is specific to the plan. Thank you.
Satisfied, John?
That's
Okay. You also have request 41, calls for service report from July 4th. Chief Sabowski, I think, explain, or do you want to explain what you're asking?
Without Commissioner Gehrig here, we used to always have a post-4th of July discussion. And there would be people out there who would ask him, I don't know if I haven't heard this, who say, loosen up the laws and allow us to have fireworks. This year I heard from people saying it sounded like a war zone out there. But I think it's a good conversation to know, were there problems? What were they? What did our police department see on the 4th of July? Just to have a sense of what happened in our city.
Sure. Good evening, Commissioners. So from July 1st to July 6th, we responded to 234 fireworks-related calls. Not unlike any other prior years, that is always a busy period for those types of calls. As you may be aware, enforcement in those areas are often difficult because of existing North Dakota Century Code that requires either an officer view the violation in order to enforce it, or in the event of a long-form referral, that we have a citizen complainant who can identify the person who did it, and we are able to detain and confirm that identity, and then refer it for prosecution. So in talking with the city prosecutor's office, their experience also has been that very few of these cases are issued, and normally are egregious cases in which officers are through a particular area and have tried to disperse folks who are shooting these things off and are, I guess, aggressive in their failure to follow those directives, and then those cases may move forward. That's pretty much the posture.
Chief, what's your experience where you came from with fireworks?
Same thing, if not worse.
It's one town or the other.
Milwaukee, Beloit, Madison, it's a difficult thing, and I know Commissioner Gehrig talked about maybe you don't even need an ordinance. I don't know, that's not my decision, but it is something that is global in a sense. It's hard to enforce, and on good side this year, we didn't have any fires. Obviously, that's a public safety concern that these things can start buildings on fire where we have heavy populations. So I don't think we have a very good answer for that, but based on other calls that are going on, those aren't necessarily the most highest priority.
And Commissioner Gehrig would have, I'm guessing, have said, well, why have laws on the book if you're unable to enforce them? There's a balancing act here. Another aspect I'm not sure about is if there were any injuries or not that were really, huge.
Yeah, none that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Okay.
Item 42, Commissioner Strand.
Thank you. We have 3 new members on our commission here since the election, so I thought I'd wait until after the election to just advance a simple topic to share with you all. It's not uncommon that we'll have somebody approach us and say, well, you're not all reporting to each other what's happening in your portfolios. And what we really don't have is a mechanism to share with each other what's happening in our portfolios, in our assignments, in our liaisons relationships, in our boards and commissions that we sit on or with. We don't have a moment to sit and update each other. So then we're vulnerable to people on the outside saying, well, you don't tell each other what's happening in your portfolios. We've heard it recently with the police department, that people have said, well, the police department, the liaison, the mayor isn't telling us. And I'm just saying it's an example. So what I saw at the school board was we would, at the end of every meeting, have an agenda item, which is which is liaison committee updates report. So at the end of every meeting, you go around the room, and every sitting commissioner, if they have something to share, just simply updates the others on what's happening. Like I could tell people what's happening at community development. Commissioner Pepcorn could tell us what's happening at liquor control. Commissioner Preston could tell us what's happening at planning. Commissioner Kopak could tell us what's happening in her new portfolios and so on. So I think I'd like to have us try this, where we just simply wrap each meeting up and have run around the table updates from each other. So if there is something relevant to share, that's our moment in a space that's formally constructed to do that.
Discussion. Commissioner Kolpak.
Yeah, I certainly like that idea. I think the transparency is something we need to continue to focus on and talk about. And I think also I can tell you, as a recent candidate running for the city commission, I got a lot of questions about what departments do, what do city departments do, what do commissions do, and I just think this would be a great opportunity to help our citizens and our city understand more about the city of Fargo and how it works.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Preston.
I would agree.
We can try it.
No harm.
Yeah,
No.
thank you.
Item 18, a lease of 80 parking stalls, 50 at Mercantile and 30 at Roco in the General Services Administration, GSI. Mark Williams to explain with interstate parking.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Item 18 is a lease that Interstate Parking has been working with the GSA, General Service Administration. They're kind of like the property managers for the federal government for both the Mercantile and the Roco parking ramps. It's technically an agreement that can go 20 years, but it can be terminated by 60-day notice. And in 2015, we contracted with Interstate Parking to manage all our parking facilities, and I believe the question is capacity of these ramps, and Paul Schnettler with Interstate Parking here is to answer those questions.
I think Commissioner Strand, that was your question, is that correct?
Essentially, to start with.
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. We've been operating for the city, with the city since 2015, as Mark has mentioned, and we do manage the inventory in such a way that there's always, so far, knock on wood, there's always been space available at peak times. And since COVID, we have seen an increase in available inventory, and we don't see that changing very much over the coming years with increased working from home allowances by most employers. So we do recommend this contract. It's a new source of revenue for us, and we do have the protection of having a 60-day cancellation if something unforeseen happens. If a new company moves downtown and they need to buy some more parking spaces or things like that. But we do have the technology and the knowledge to manage our inventory in such a way that we always have space available. Average since, for the past year, we've had 200 spaces available at peak time at the Roco garage.
Commissioner Strand.
That's what I'm getting to, and with the Mercantile ramp coming, I remember when the Roco was opened, our intention was, as I recall, and I wasn't there, was to make it available to the general public as well. And then they built the Dillard building and and connected it to the Roco ramp. And I was curious about the impact on capacity and availability to the citizens coming downtown to shop and have lunch and so on. So this is and then since then we have the Mercantile opening, which is a whole nother access of available parking. But then we've also lost the Island Park ramp, or the ramp next to the banks. So bottom line, are we comfortable we're not going to be shortchanging the people's access to these parking ramps with these contracts?
Yeah, personally, I'm very comfortable with that. We operate in 14 different cities, and we monitor this, and we look at the utilization rates, they're called. And there's a lot more residents coming into the downtowns, and they're not there during the daytime, but they park at night. There was a lot of discussion when Dillard came on, like, they requested, I think, was 100 spaces that they could use. And we ran our numbers and compared them to other downtowns. And we did recommend that there was room for Dillard, knowing that 60% of the people are going to rent a space and only 20% of those are going to be there during the daytime. And we're seeing the same sort of thing with the downtown daytime parkers. They're going to be there. They used to be there 80% of the time. It's less than that now. And a lot of them are in and out with meetings quite often. And so I don't see an impact on this at all. And like I say, if something unforeseen happens, we did negotiate the 60-day cancellation just so we don't lock you guys into a bad position.
If you could just remind us who owns the ROCO or who owns the ramps, not everybody remembers that clearly, and then who's the revenue go to?
Well, Mark, I'll let you answer that.
Like the ramps that the city of Fargo owns?
Yes, the ROCO ramp.
ROCO.
Isn't that there's the ROCO ramp, and then there's the ramp next to Block 9, and then there's the Mercantile, and there's different ownership relationships. I'm just trying to remember.
Block 9, I believe, is owned by the Block 9 partnership.
Okay, and ROCO?
Mercantile parking ramp is owned by the city of Fargo. ROCO is owned by the city of Fargo.
So that revenue comes to the city?
To the parking fund, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Item 43, Chief Sabowski, give us
I
an,
think we need to take action on this one, don't we? We haven't approved this particular.
oh, I'm sorry,
item.
yes, I'll take a motion on 18.
So moved.
Second.
Second, any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Preston.
Aye.
Colpack.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Sabowski.
Good evening again. We wanted to provide an update to you and the community on the officer-involved critical incident from Friday morning. I want to start out by reiterating with the commission and the community that we hear your concerns and we understand your questions. And we seek the same answers that you do in terms of whether the use of force was justified or not. That's what the investigation will help a prosecutor decide. I also want to assure you that our department will take the appropriate action based on the investigative findings. I don't say that lightly. That's a large statement. And that's a commitment that we are making to you. But it's also imperative that the investigative process be followed to ensure the integrity of that decision. Okay? We have done a lot in the last year and a half to help build trust and transparency in our community. We brought in body-worn cameras for that very purpose. That is evidence in the investigation, and the release of that also requires the prosecutor's consent. And if they feel that releasing it earlier would compromise the investigative integrity, they are not likely to do that. That doesn't mean that we won't continue to advocate, but that is their decision to make. We've also utilized an outside agency, the North Dakota Bureau of Criminal Investigation, to conduct this critical incident, again, to create separation from our department in terms of any bias or influence in the investigation. So we place our trust in them in terms of conducting that investigation and forwarding their findings to the prosecutor. That's a good thing. One thing that is somewhat difficult is that what it does is place us as a department and you more in the dark. As I stand here, I don't know the details of why this occurred or all the details of what occurred. That's intentional separation. We responded to the initial scene, and we turned this over to the North Dakota Bureau of Criminal Investigation, who are still very involved in this active investigation in terms of completing interviews, processing evidence, things of that nature, reviewing all of the video. We will have a lot of video to review, okay? These are dynamic and very complex investigations. They're not often well understood, but again, as another transparency piece, and through the work of our department, city admin, and our concerned community organizers, we put together a police advisory and oversight board. Thursday night, we have a scheduled meeting, and that agenda will include entirely a presentation to the board and the community, all the policies, protocols, and procedures related to these very complex investigations, I will be able to explain why things are done a certain way and why they may not be. I will try and answer as many questions as time allows and that I can answer relative to the investigation. But again, this is a transparency piece to give everyone in the community a better understanding of what we're trying to accomplish, and we are trying to accomplish the same thing. We did meet with the family this morning, Shane's brothers, Ryan and Gary, along with a couple of our community organizer folks and members of the Bureau of Criminal Investigation, and had a similar discussion. They also had some other concerns on a personal level about how some of the things were done. We've already begun to have policy discussions about that, and we will be following up on their concerns and addressing those with them. I've also had a discussion with Birch Burdick, the state's attorney. This is normally the person who would review that case once the investigation is complete. He informed me this morning that, again, and to ensure any conflict and to create greater objectivity, that he would be referring the review of this case to the North Dakota Attorney General's office. So we will have an attorney from the North Dakota Attorney General's office who will be the prosecutorial reviewer of this incident. I will be speaking with that individual in the near future. But again, I was assured by their office that they would give this top priority as soon as the investigation is complete and they've been able to review this. The other piece that we have discussed, both at the state level and the city level, as is done in other areas, upon conclusion of this investigation, and again, to make it open to the public, is to take the investigation and any applicable videos with redacting in terms of privacy and things like that, and put it onto some type of a public portal so that everyone has access and they can look through the investigation. That's done in a lot of other states. So we're in discussions with North Dakota in terms of whether they might do that from a BCI perspective, but if not, I think our department and our city would support that prospect as well, so that that is out there and transparent to the public, and we don't have to respond to a whole bunch of open records requests. Everyone can have access to the information and go from there. Lastly, just we're asking for your trust and your support that we are going to continue this and that we will take the necessary steps. I understand that not everyone will feel that way, and we will have to show that through actions, and we're prepared to do that. But we also have another individual that we're still looking to interview, that the Bureau of Criminal Investigation is still looking to interview, Derek Stanley, who is an important witness to this case as well and probably has significant information to offer to them. So if anyone, asking for your assistance and encouraging Mr. Stanley to make contact, and so they can get his statement and add this to the bulk of investigative information. Absent any questions, commissioners, I think that's my update for tonight. And then again, Thursday evening at 5 p.m. That's also broadcast from Commission Chambers, so I would encourage folks to attend and or watch from home.
Any questions from commissioners?
Okay,
Thank you.
Sorry,
Go
I just
back.
was going to make a comment that I think it's very important that we continue to be as transparent with information as we have it with the community and continue to communicate what we know when we know it. And that's just really important for that integrity and building trust. And I just want to make that point.
Thank you. Any other business? Commissioner Strand?
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Preston has her birthday the 15th, so that's just something fun to notice.
No more silence. We
But-
want justice.
The last thing I'd like to note is
No more silence. We want justice.
I would like to,
No more silence. We want justice.
We heard you. You can leave now.
No more silence. We want justice.
Oh,
I'd like to extend my personal condolences to Chief Zabolski when all of this was happening last week. He also had a death in his family. And so, we're all with everybody who's facing tragedy these days.
is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
There's a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.